Today on the channel, we'll be talking about every way that we make money as creators. And all of these income streams follow a specific formula that we use to monetize our brand and our channel.
This is a new series that we're making in partnership with Samsung. And the goal of it is to answer questions from all of you. We took to Twitter and asked everybody what they needed help on as creators, or if there was a question that we could answer. One of the questions that came through was from a creator named Luke in New Jersey.
I've been making content for a long time, and what I've always struggled with is taking it to the next level of getting a sponsor, getting a paid contract, taking it to the point where somebody wants to pay me to make what I'm already making.
Now, this question is something that I think a lot of creators want to know the answer to. Like, even when we were first starting out, this was a question that I had. Like, how do we figure this out? How do we actually figure out how to turn this into a career? We've been in the space for 10 years. Any knowledge that we have, we'd love to give you. We're empowered by Samsung. They give us the tools to succeed. We're trying to do the same thing for you. You know what I'm saying?
You know what I'm saying? Tic-tac-toe.
Is that?
It'll work if I put graphics on the screen.
All right. And the tool they sent us this week is actually right here. It's the Galaxy Book Pro 360. And let me show you something. I could be like, hey, Colin, you want to see something? Check this out.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Check that out.
Creators have to be super versatile. We have to do all different types of things in all different types of places. This is by far one of the most versatile tools for creators I've ever seen. It's super lightweight and easy to take anywhere. It has this incredible AMOLED screen that allows you to work either inside or outside and still see the screen super well, even if the sun is really bright.
And we're going to actually be using this and drawing some graphics that go along with this episode to give you guys a step-by-step guide to figuring out how to monetize your brand.
One of my favorite things about the Galaxy Book Pro 360 is that you can use it with their new S Pen. Throughout this episode, I'm going to be using the S Pen.
Oh, just you.
Well, okay, you can make one of them like we did last time. Samir's going to make one of the graphics, but we're not going to tell you which one is his. You have to try and guess.
I can use the S Pen too, man.
It was pretty clear last time which one was yours.
I don't think it'll be as clear this time. I've
Okay,
improved.
you've
I've
improved?
improved as a graphic designer.
Okay.
So for all of you, as you're watching the episode, if you figure out which graphic I did, put that in the comments. All right, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Make sure to like this video. And Colin, roll the intro. To start, maybe we should just talk about all the different ways that we're currently monetizing.
The first income stream that we added was 2 to 3 years after we started the Colin and Samir channel, and that was advertising. We started to work with brands and integrate them into our videos. Along with that was AdSense, but it's an extremely small part of the pie and still is.
Now, over the past year, we've also added some other revenue streams, one of them being direct-to-consumer content, which is our online course. And most recently, we sold an NFT, so digital assets.
So advertising, courses, and yeah, now NFTs.
So with anything that you're trying to monetize, there's a formula to get there, to actually define what the product is and if it's ready to go to market. And a lot of that comes from this understanding that creativity can be relatively intangible. It's tough to grasp, but packaging it in a certain way and understanding it even yourself, doing all the work before you actually put it out there, that's what we're going to take you through now.
So Luke was not early in his career as a creative, but he is early in his career as a creator looking to monetize.
And one of the first things, like no matter what you're doing, whether you're launching a video series, a podcast, or even a product, one of the first things you have to answer is who you're making it for. Who is the audience? That's number one. Everything we've ever done always starts with who is the audience. What is like your dream project and your dream partner in that project?
I would love to kind of host a podcast that's almost like a late night show style thing where I get to just like travel around and like interview interesting people. So I feel like a kind of like logical partner for that would be like an audio brand or even just like a traveling brand. Like I'm not really sure the partner aspect of it, but I feel like it's kind of broad where like a couple different would work for it.
You know, the reason we're digging into that and asking you is because I think there's a couple of steps that are incredibly important in being able to monetize what you're doing in the way that you want to. The first one is identifying who you're making content for, like who's the audience? Who are you expecting to be on the other side? And a way that we like to do that is to think about it from identities. So try and identify like who these people are, and you can put them into different buckets. Like for example, for us, we think about it as career creators, aspiring creators, people in the creator industry, and then people who don't believe in the creator industry, non-believers. So those are the 4 buckets that we think about. And then Those are our identities. And on the other side of the page, we like to put emotions. So what emotion are we trying to drive from these different groups? Captured in the middle there, when you connect those emotions. So if we say we want aspiring creators to feel inspired, we want people in the creator industry to feel educated, we want, non-believers to believe. So like you start to recognize, like, what are you trying to do with your content? The middle there, that line that you draw, that essentially is your value prop, and it helps you define your content. Like, what is the value of your content to this specific audience? As you define that, what becomes really easy is then you say, well, are there any brands that align with that mission? Are there any brands that actually have the same goal that I have and are trying to reach the same people and draw the same emotion? If so, I got to make a list of those brands and I got to tell them what I'm doing, because it's the same thing that they're trying to do.
You said like start niche. I kind of think the niche I want to start with is start with the people I know that are doing really cool things at age 23 and 24. There's a lot of people with like uncertainty and doubt right now at that age group. And like one of my best friends just moved to LA last year and is working for Ellen. And he's like living a crazy life. And people are always like, what's he doing? How's he doing it? I'm like, wait, like I got to interview him just to talk about it. And like, there's like at least 5 or 6 more people like that in completely different states and jobs and fields. And I feel like that's kind of a cool place to start.
Man, okay.
Here's what I really like,
I like that
about this.
That's a great idea.
When you hone in on people your age, that is super relatable and something that people understand. So I would call it People My Age with Luke Miller. And I would only interview people who are your age and have a conversation about what it means to be that age.
I love it. I think it's a
so
great
that
idea.
when you turn a year older, now you can interview people who are in that age bracket.
I kind of like that too.
That's fun. I like that. I would listen to that. I also think if you want to make it broader than that, you could call it, this is an idea Colin and I had when we were in our 20s, but something, you could call it 20-something. And it's for 20-somethings, people who are in their 20s trying to figure out their career. If you think about it, you're offering like post-collegiate, early workforce people in their 20s perspective and guidance through conversation.
10 episodes. First episode starts with someone who's 20, and it goes all the way up until the final episode where the person's 29.
That's good.
That's a good idea. I like that.
I would listen to that. Yeah. And the episode titles are, 20, and then it has the person's name and their career. 21, person's name and their career. That's cool.
Oh, I think we're on to something, boys.
All right, now we're cooking.
On. You see, yeah, but do you see how like in this process of brainstorming, you just like dig in deep to like, who is that person who's listening? What are they getting out of it? What's the value? How does it get shared? How does it get talked about? All of that stuff is so important. Because then you're saying, I'm just talking to people in their 20s who are looking for guidance. So what other brands talk to people in their 20s who are looking for guidance? Now you can start to pitch.
The next thing that we had to figure out and that we spoke to Luke about was process. How are you going to make your podcast? Do you have a sustainable way to do that over a long period of time?
I also think giving yourself like start and end dates, like putting some framework around it, it can get very overwhelming when you're just like, all right, I'm just going to make stuff. But if you're like, I'm going to make 10 episodes of this, it becomes like very digestible, So I do think that giving yourself frameworks is really helpful.
And it'll help you figure out your process, because that's really an important part before you even start working with brands, is having a sustainable process so that you can just continue to make episode after episode after episode and see how the audience even feels about it and start to grow an audience and a community around it.
Podcasting for us is what we found out turned out to be the process that we enjoyed the most. It was the most sustainable process for us. It was the process we could replicate. And so as you look at our content today, it's a video podcast, and that's because it's process first. Like the process was sustainable. Once we figured that out, then we were like, okay, let's make that more creative. And once we got those two locked in, then it was like, cool, now let's monetize it. Like all these creative ideas are awesome, but they only happen if you have the process down of like, you can guarantee that you can make a podcast once a week, or you can make 10 episodes of this podcast. So that's something that I don't think we fully realized when we first started creating. We would just be like, what's the best idea? Let's go make that. And every time we made it, it was completely different process. Like we didn't know how long it took to make. We didn't know if writing happened first or if editing, like we just didn't know what the process was.
The problem was, even if a video that we made was successful, we couldn't do it again in any sort of timely manner because we weren't tracking what our process was. And if you can't be consistent, then it's very hard for anyone to want to work with you and spend money with you.
Now, as we get into that flow of process, we layer on top creative. Even this whole series is a great example. Like, we release this show every week, and typically we cover creator news. Now we've decided to add on to that creatively and say, well, we also want to cover creator questions. So now we've taken the process and said, let's layer on more creativity on top of it. Let's enhance the creative.
So the graphics we're making are a clear example of that. We are layering on top and making this episode more interesting. The next thing that is really important to do is start to identify a North Star when it comes to monetization.
2-3 years ago, we wrote down Samsung, because what we were watching at that point was that Samsung was empowering creators. They were saying, hey, we're going to give creators the tools, and we're also going to empower them to create what they want to make. So for whatever you're making, you want to identify who else is in the space talking to the same audience, trying to take them through the same transformation. And then you want to say, that's a brand that I want to connect with.
So now we're at the final step, which is actually monetizing your brand, monetizing your videos or your podcast, whatever your product is.
So for that, I would recommend making yourself a media kit. This doesn't actually have to be, something that's written or designed. It could also be a video. It could also be an audio pitch. Like, you can get really creative with this, but what you want to do is storytell everything we just talked about. Storytell who you are, who you speak to, how you speak to them, which is through your content, what your mission is when you speak to them. And then most importantly is give me a menu to tell me how to get involved. So you actually have to lay that out and say, the way I get involved with you is through a 60-second ad unit or through a custom piece of content, or even if it's not advertising, you start to think this process still works if it's the way you get involved is you buy the t-shirt, right? The way you get involved is you buy a ticket to the experience. So you start to realize that you have to build the same narrative that you focus on for every video. Every piece of content we make, we try and build a narrative, right? But you have to do that for your brand and how someone actually interacts with you.
And whether you're reaching out to your own community to sell them something potentially, or you're trying to reach out to a new brand, you really want to lean in to your strengths. We pitch ourselves all of the time with explainer videos.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do. We make videos where we break things down and explain them. So if we want to explain ourselves and how a brand could work with us, we're going to use video a lot of the time.
And I think that comes to one of the most important pieces is show, don't tell, right? Show the partners, show people who you want to work with exactly who you are, what your value prop is. Don't necessarily tell them, right? Like, try your best to make sure you're including visuals, examples, stuff where they can look at it and be like, oh yeah.
Show, don't tell takes time. That's another thing we talked to Luke about, was that these relationships can build over a long period of time. And, for us, it took 2 to 3 years before we first started working with brands on this channel. Took another 2 years before we released a course.
Yeah.
That's 4 years before we even asked our audience to purchase anything.
All right, Luke. So let's review the steps.
Audience, value prop, process, creative, monetization.
So you got a lot of work to do before you can get to the monetization. Well, you know how to reach us, hit us up on Twitter, and appreciate you submitting your question, man.
Yeah, for sure. I can't wait to see the video.
So thanks so much to Luke for submitting his question. There's actually a lot of questions that were submitted through creator support. So we're going to try and keep doing this, but let us know what you think about the series. Let us know how we can best support some of the questions that you all have about being a creator.
We always preach that you should put a lot of the emphasis on the idea. The more time you spend on the idea, on the preparation before you pick up a camera or a mic to record, the easier the process will be after, and most likely the more successful that video or podcast will be. And that's where something like the Galaxy Book Pro 360 comes into play in a major way. Setting up outside at a coffee shop and just digging in for 3 hours, planning, researching, writing out your scripts.
I gotta say also drawing with the S Pen. That's super cool. I think what's crazy is you can be typing and then all of a sudden you touch the screen and it works. And all of a sudden you grab the S Pen and you can actually draw something. That experience for me is it's very creative. It feels very creative to me to not have to be just confined to one type of use on this device.
Yeah, and when you have the skills that I do with the S Pen, it's even much more exciting.
You guys didn't even notice. You guys didn't even notice which one was mine. So let's be honest. All right, so that's it for this episode of the Colin and Samir Show. If you guys have more questions, feel free to put them in the comments. If you have follow-ups, if you have questions about anything, put them in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Thanks to Samsung. Check out the link in our description if you guys are interested in checking out the Galaxy Book Pro 360. Colin?
Samir just said questions about anything, and he means anything.
I mean anything. Could be anything.
Samir, roll the outro.